I've learned that every household carries its own version of weather. Some families move through their days under calm skies. Others exist beneath an unspoken haze. Ours? We stay under a ceiling that feels a little too low, like a pressure front is waiting to drop on us the moment someone says the wrong thing. I used to think I was imagining it. Then Christmas started creeping closer, and that ceiling felt like it weighed about as much as my entire job. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It's funny, in a bleak sort of way. I spend my workdays reviewing compliance statements, cross-checking logs, tracing expense flow, monitoring risk flags, and making sure people with power don't do something foolish with it. Meanwhile, in my own house, I ignored all the same warning signs that I routinely catch at work without breaking a sweat. Someone once told me that being too close to a problem makes you blind to it. Whoever said that must have spent at least one holiday with in-laws. If you'd walked into our house the week before Christmas, you wouldn't have thought anything unusual was happening. My wife, Denise, floated around decorating like always. Our daughter, 13 going on 30, kept making lists she pretended weren't lists. Our son practiced his allergy routines with the seriousness of a small general preparing for winter. And me? I floated around the edges, trying to pretend the shifting in my gut was just seasonal stress. Denise kept humming that one holiday song she always hums when she's anxious. She thinks nobody notices. I notice. I notice everything, mostly because noticing things is how I've kept clients from losing their minds, money, or licenses for the last 15 years. I've filed enough reports to fill a warehouse. Funny how I didn't file the one that would have saved me trouble months earlier, one titled Pauline Knocks and Acts of Casual Cruelty. I didn't need a report to know something was off. Denise talked too fast when the boutique came up. Her mother, Pauline, suddenly took an interest in our family routine, which was strange because she normally treated our schedule like background noise. And Taylor, her charming older brother who loved telling me how a real man runs a household, had started swinging by the shop with a little too much enthusiasm. Something was brewing. I just didn't know yet whether it was a mid-sized thunderstorm or a statewide emergency alert. It started with numbers, like most of my problems. Not dramatic numbers, not the kind that jump off the page. These were quiet, subtle little irregularities that made my professional instincts twitch. A boutique card charge from a lodge 2 towns over. Another one from a luxury place that definitely sells nothing a small boutique needs. A missing invoice. A shipping confirmation that didn't match the manifest. If it were work, I'd have flagged it immediately. But it wasn't work. It was my wife's family. I stared at the statements late one night, the kind of night when the house feels like it's holding its breath. Denise was asleep. The kids were asleep. Even the heating system made less noise than usual. I scanned the dates again. The lodge charge was from a Thursday afternoon. That was already suspicious. Pauline doesn't leave town on weekdays unless there's a sale she can't resist. The next day I mentioned it casually, testing her. "Hey, weird question," I said while she was rearranging brooches behind the boutique counter. "Did you or Denise pick up anything from Hollow Ridge Lodge last week?" She didn't even blink. "Supplier meeting," she said, smoothing a velvet wrap on a mannequin. "They host them there sometimes." "Supplier meeting," I repeated. She nodded, smiling too wide. Pauline's smile has always been a performance. It never reaches her eyes. Her eyes stay exactly the same, sharp, assessing, calculating. I learned long ago that her smile means nothing good. I wanted to believe her. I didn't. The story felt wrong in ways I couldn't yet put into words. Later that week, I followed Taylor out into the parking lot after he made one of his famous drive-by comments about how some men know how to take initiative. The guy had been riding that line for years. Usually, I let it go. But that day, maybe because the lodge charge was still whispering at me, I didn't let it go. "Taylor," I called, walking toward his truck as he tossed a toolbox into the back. He turned, surprised. "Yeah? Do you ever get tired?" I asked. He frowned. "Tired of what?" "Of talking like you're auditioning for a commercial where the main character's only personality trait is wearing flannel." He laughed, the kind of laugh people use when they're trying to decide whether to be insulted. "Easy there, it's a joke." "I'm not laughing." His jaw tightened. The parking lot lights reflected off his lifted truck like it was part of a stage set. "You okay, Aaron?" he asked, drawing out my name. "Peachy," I said. "Just curious whether you know anything about a supplier meeting at a lodge." His eyes darted for half a second. Maybe other people wouldn't have noticed. I noticed. "That's boutique stuff," he said. "Ask Pauline." "I did." He shrugged. "Then that's your answer." It wasn't. But pushing him wouldn't get me anywhere. Instead, I memorized that little flicker of unease in his expression. It was tiny. but it was real. A few days later, Christmas Eve crept closer, and our living room transformed into a staging area for controlled cheer. Denise put up the garland, our daughter fine-tuned her list of responsibilities for managing her brother's allergy protocol, and Pauline left 12 voicemails outlining what we needed to bring to dinner, how we needed to arrange arrival times, and how she expected punctuality. I wanted to toss my phone out the window by the 6th voicemail. That night, as Denise fell asleep early from stress, I sat in my office flipping through the boutique statements again. A pattern formed. I didn't see it at first. Lodge, boutique supplies, gas station near the highway, that same lodge again. I began lining them up, date by date. That's when it clicked. The charges weren't random. They were paired. Lodge visits matched evenings when Denise came home late. I remembered those nights. Her explanations had been too quick, too practiced. Something in my chest tightened, not in a dramatic way, more in a, well, that confirms it sort of way. I closed the statements. I didn't confront her, or scream, or start a dramatic scene. That's not who I am. In my line of work, reactions only help you feel better temporarily. Documentation helps you win permanently. So I opened a fresh folder on my computer. I titled it something boring, because boring names get ignored. Then I started dropping files into it. Screenshots, timestamp logs, photos of statements, everything I would need if this turned into something more serious than a lodge charge. 2 days before Christmas, our daughter walked into my office while I was organizing. She doesn't usually intrude without knocking. She's a thoughtful kid, perceptive in ways that sometimes unsettle me. She pointed at the folder open on my screen. "Is that for work?" "Sort of," I said. She studied me for a long moment. "Mom's nervous." I leaned back. "Your grandmother knows how to make people nervous." She shook her head. "It's not just Grandma." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say without saying too much. She crossed her arms. "Dad, if something goes wrong at dinner, what do I do?" She asked it so plainly, so calmly, that I felt the floor shift under me even without any dramatic metaphor. I stared at her. She stared back, waiting. No fear, no hesitation, just steady readiness. She gets that from me. "We stick to the plan," I said. She nodded once. "Okay." I watched her leave, closing the door gently behind her. My daughter has a talent for reading silence better than most adults read conversation. I don't know where she learned it, but I know she'll need it. The morning of Christmas Eve brought a new gift, a boutique vendor email forwarded by mistake to my account. Denise had been using my laptop the night before, and somehow the autosync caught it. The email was a request for confirmation about a boutique card charge from, of course, the lodge. The message attached included a signed receipt, not just any signature, Pauline's, and below hers, written in a hurried, almost familiar scrawl, was the name of Denise's former partner, a name I hadn't heard in years but recognized instantly. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just sat there in a quiet, sinking kind of clarity. A strange thing happens when you confirm something you've suspected for too long. The uncertainty dissolves. In its place, you get a cold sort of efficiency. I printed the receipt, then I slipped it into a folder behind several unrelated documents. If anyone ever asked why I had so much boutique paperwork in my office, I already had a dozen plausible explanations prepared. That evening, Denise tried extra hard to make the house feel normal. She overcompensated with cookies she knew I didn't eat, played holiday music louder than necessary, and suggested a family board game none of us actually wanted to play. She kept glancing at me, as if checking whether I looked suspicious. I made sure I didn't. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontations are loud and messy. I prefer strategies that speak for themselves. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stepped outside. The air had that crisp, metallic winter stillness that always makes neighborhoods seem emptier than they are. Across the street, a single porch light flickered. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Otherwise, quiet. I walked to my car, opened the back door, and retrieved a small pouch of files I had organized earlier. I placed it under the passenger seat, carefully angled so it wouldn't slide. Nobody ever checks under the passenger seat. I once found a client's missing tablet there after a 3-day panic. I shut the car door gently, no need to wake the house. Inside, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. From where I sat, I could see the living room, decorations glowing, stockings hanging symmetrically, presents arranged with Denise's usual precision. Everything looked perfect. It was the kind of scene people post online with captions about warmth and gratitude. The reality under it felt entirely different. I'm not a dramatic man. I don't make scenes. I don't throw plates or shout down hallways. but I do have a skill set built over years of tracking patterns, catching inconsistencies, and preparing responses before anyone even realizes there's a problem. My daughter once called it Dad's quiet mode. She said it half joking, half scared. I didn't know how to respond then. I still don't. I stared at the tea mug until it cooled. A plan began forming. Not fully shaped yet, not ready to move, but present. Clear lines, clear steps, clear outcomes. A path with no return once taken. When I finally went to bed, Denise stirred slightly. "Everything okay?" she mumbled. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." "About tomorrow?" "Something like that." She drifted back to sleep. I watched her breathing slow, steady, and soft. I wondered briefly whether she knew what I knew, whether Pauline had told her anything, whether the lodge trips were something she truly believed were supplier meetings or something she didn't want to admit. It didn't matter anymore. The folder under my passenger seat had already begun a countdown she didn't know existed. On Christmas morning, our daughter woke early to practice the allergy kit drill with her brother. I listened from the hallway as she coached him through the steps. She was calm, focused, disciplined. She reminded me of a field captain. I almost smiled. By late afternoon, we were dressed, packed, and ready to head to Pauline's house. Denise looked pale under her makeup. She kept straightening her blouse, adjusting her necklace, smoothing her hair. Small nervous habits she only displays when something is deeply wrong. "You sure you're good?" I asked in the car. She nodded quickly. "Just tired." Our daughter looked at me through the mirror. Not a word, but her expression said everything. When we pulled into Pauline's driveway, I saw that her holiday decorations were more elaborate than usual. Layers of lights, glowing reindeer on the lawn, wreaths that looked like they cost half a paycheck each. Pauline always liked her displays to say, "Look at me, I'm flourishing." Even when she wasn't. The door opened before we even knocked. "There you are," Pauline said, loud and bright. "Come in. Hurry, we're just about to serve the appetizers." She kissed the kids, hugged Denise, then turned to me with a stiff pat on the arm. "Aaron." The pat meant, behave. I stepped inside and felt that familiar Knox House tension settle over me like a weighted blanket. The table was set like something from a magazine. Polished silverware, folded napkins, 3 different centerpieces competing for attention. As we walked toward the dining room, I glanced at Pauline. She was too cheerful, too performative, too controlled, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that the evening would not end the way she expected. I didn't know yet how it would end, but I did know one thing. The moment something went wrong, because something always went wrong when Pauline mixed control with opportunity, I'd be ready. The first crack appeared sooner than I thought. Our son sat near the end of the table. Pauline hovered behind him with a dessert plate in her hand, smiling. I knew that smile. I hated that smile. It always arrived 1 second before something subtle and unpleasant happened, and I saw the dessert. Her bright, festive, absolutely not allowed. I opened my mouth to stop her. Too late. She placed it in front of him with a breezy, "Oh, sweetie, I forgot." Forgot. No, she hadn't. I stood. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but with a controlled, deliberate motion. Our daughter was faster than me. She reached the table, moved the plate aside, and started the protocol we'd practiced. Calm voice, step by step. Everyone froze. Pauline blinked at her in confusion. It was just a mistake. Our daughter looked up at her. Her voice steady, clear, and almost quiet enough to be mistaken for a whisper. "Grandma," she said, "I know exactly where you were yesterday." The room didn't move. Denise's breath caught. Taylor stopped chewing. Pauline's face shifted by a fraction, just enough to betray something she didn't intend. I watched the moment settle like a dropped curtain, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anxious. I felt ready. If someone asked me later why I didn't confront Pauline in that moment, right after my daughter calmly delivered the verbal equivalent of pulling a rug out from under her, I could list a dozen reasons. Some logical, some practical, some just self-preservation dressed up as strategy. But the truth is simpler. I wasn't ready for the scene to end yet. A scene is most powerful when you allow it to play out naturally. I've learned that from years of watching executives try to escape their own mistakes too fast, only to make things worse. When you let silence speak, it reveals more than any argument could. The room sat still for a good 10 seconds, long enough for every person at that table to register that something large and unspoken had just landed among us. Then our daughter resumed the allergy protocol, calm and focused, while Pauline stood there frozen, dessert server still in her hand, posture locked like someone pressed a pause button on her spine. I stepped beside my daughter, partly to assist, mostly to set a protective boundary. "We're okay," I told her quietly. She nodded without looking up, too locked into the steps to break concentration. Denise's voice rose, brittle. Mom, why would you give him that? You know he can't have that? Pauline blinked, then forced a light laugh. I told you. It slipped my mind. It's Christmas, for goodness sake. We're all distracted. Our daughter looked at her again, not with anger, but with something worse. Clarity. Yesterday, she said evenly, you weren't distracted. It was like someone dimmed the room by 20%. Pauline's expression tightened. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. That was the moment I knew she understood exactly what my daughter meant. Later, when the kids were stable and seated with plates far from any questionable desserts, Denise pulled me into the hallway. Erin, she whispered, eyes wide, voice shaking in that restrained way she uses when she wants to ask a question she already fears the answer to. What was that? Why did she say that? I shrugged. Maybe ask her. I'm asking you. I don't speak for her. Denise pressed a hand to her forehead. Something is wrong. Something's been wrong for weeks. But I feel like I'm the last one to know. Her voice wavered. Did you tell her anything? No, I said truthfully. She noticed things. She put them together. Denise stared at me with a kind of dawning worry that had nothing to do with dessert. Erin, please, not tonight, not now. I considered promising her something soothing, but comforting lies aren't my style. I didn't want to lie to her. I also didn't want to tell her everything. Truth is a sharp tool. You don't swing it around unless you're prepared for what it cuts. We're fine, I said. Let's go back inside. She didn't believe me, but she followed. Dinner continued on shaky legs, like a table with one loose screw. Small talk felt strained. Even Taylor toned down his usual theatrics, though he still looked at me like he expected I'd cause the entire situation personally. The kid's plate remained hazard-free, and our daughter stayed near him like a guard dog in a holiday sweater. Pauline kept her distance, which may have been the first considerate act of her year. She busied herself in the kitchen, clattering pans louder than necessary. I watched her. She avoided my eyes. I could almost hear her mind scrambling to regain control of a narrative that had slipped from her hands. Pauline prided herself on control. When something pierced her version of the story, she didn't adjust. She retaliated. That was her nature. I knew she'd make a move sooner or later. The question was when. We left early, citing tired kids, which wasn't entirely a lie. Our daughter was emotionally drained. Our son had been on high alert. Even I felt like the house had siphoned energy from me the moment we stepped inside. The drive home was quiet. Denise sat stiffly, staring forward, her fingers tightly woven together in her lap. The kids sat in the back, whispering quietly. Every few seconds, our daughter's eyes flicked to me in the mirror, as if confirming whether I was okay. When we got home, Denise ushered the kids upstairs, saying she'd tuck them in. I stayed downstairs, pretending to review the mail on the counter. When she returned, she stood a few feet away from me, arms crossed, posture tense. What is going on? She asked. Really? I took a breath. Your mom used the boutique card at Hollow Ridge Lodge. Her brows pinched. What? When? Thursday, and a few other times. There are receipts. She stared at me, waiting for more. There are charges labeled as supplier meetings, I said, but I checked the vendor logs. None of our known suppliers schedule meetings there. Silence. And on one of the receipts, I continued carefully, your former partner's name appears. Her hand flew to her mouth. She stumbled back a step and braced herself against the counter. It's not what you think, she whispered. I haven't said what I think. But you think something. Denise, I said gently, I'm showing you facts. She covered her face. I didn't know. I swear. She told me she was meeting a wholesaler. She said she needed a neutral place. She said I didn't need to go. I watched her, trying to gauge sincerity. My job teaches me to detect rehearsed responses. Hers wasn't rehearsed. It was raw, messy, unfiltered. That didn't mean she wasn't hiding something, but it meant she wasn't fully in on the story. I didn't put two and two together, she whispered. I thought she was just being dramatic, or trying to make the boutique seem more important than it is. I sat beside her on the stool. You're not responsible for the choices she makes. She exhaled shakily. But you think I'm part of this? I think you're caught in it. She nodded slowly. And you're planning something. I didn't answer. Erin, she said, voice trembling. Please don't do anything that... That what? I asked. Upsets her? Inconveniences her? Challenges her narrative? She shut her eyes. I stood. I need air. Outside, the chill hit me instantly. I stepped onto the porch and looked at the faint frost forming on our railing. The night sky was unusually clear. Stars scattered across the dark like someone had spilled a jar of glass beads. My phone buzzed. A text. From Taylor. We need to talk. Tomorrow, at the shop. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I stared at the message, surprised only that it took him this long. The next morning, I arrived at the boutique early. Too early, apparently, because I saw Pauline's car already parked out front. The lights inside glowed faintly. I stepped in and found her reorganizing scarves with an energy that felt almost aggressive. She barely glanced at me. We open at 10. It's 8. Then come back at 10. I got a message from Taylor. Now she looked at me. You shouldn't involve him in this, she said sharply. I didn't. He involved himself. She snorted. He cares about his family. He cares about controlling whoever lets him. Sound familiar? She asked, raising an eyebrow. It was a line meant to provoke me, and I'll admit, it worked a little. I'm not here to argue, I said, just to understand why you'd risk the boutique by charging personal visits to the business account. Her jaw tightened. You're overreacting. There are rules for expense reporting. You know that. Don't lecture me on rules, she snapped. You're not my supervisor. No, I said calmly, but I understand how compliance works, and I know what happens when irregularities appear on a statement that someone else besides the owner flags. Her grip on the scarf tightened. Are you threatening me? I'm clarifying. Her eyes narrowed. If Denise told you anything, she didn't. She always ruins things, Pauline muttered, turning back to the display. Always talking when she should stay quiet. That line told me everything I needed to know. Pauline wasn't afraid of what I knew. She was afraid of what her daughter might reveal. I left the boutique before Taylor arrived, deciding that any conversation with him would lead nowhere useful. Instead, I returned home, sat in my office, and opened my documentation folder. Step by step, I began building a timeline. Charge dates, vendor inconsistencies, locations, distance between the boutique and the lodge, travel times, vehicle logs, security footage timestamps from the boutique showing who left when. It became a clear, undeniable puzzle. While I worked, our daughter slipped into the room. Mom's upset, she said softly. I know. She thinks you're going to fight with Grandma. I paused. Do you think that? I think, she said carefully, that you don't fight. You just make things change. She wasn't wrong. Are you scared? I asked. No. She shrugged. I trust you. Kids shouldn't have to say that about situations like this. But she did, and I felt something tighten in my chest. Not in a dramatic way, just in a way that made me want to handle this right. The rest of the day moved slowly, like time itself was holding its breath. Denise avoided eye contact. Pauline didn't call, which was unusual. She normally called 10 times a day. And Taylor never followed up on his message, which meant either Pauline had sent him new instructions or he was waiting for a moment he thought would be more advantageous. I decided to control the next move. That evening, I drove to the boutique after closing. The lot was empty except for Pauline's car, still parked under a flickering street lamp. I watched her through the window. She was on the phone, pacing, agitated. I couldn't hear her words, but her gestures were sharp, tight, animated. Then she stopped pacing, listened intently, and her face changed. Not fear, not guilt. Something colder, something calculating. I knew the look well. It's the look someone gets right before they rewrite a narrative. I didn't go inside. It wasn't time yet. Instead, I returned home to find Denise sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. Aaron, she whispered. Mom called me. What did she say? She said you're trying to ruin her, that you've been snooping, that you're making all of this up. I sighed. That tracks. She said you're threatening the boutique, that you want her out of our lives. That part is partially true. She flinched. Aaron, Denise, I said gently but firmly. Your mother isn't telling you everything, and you know it. She looked away. I continued. The boutique is at risk, not because of me, but because of what she's doing. Documentation doesn't lie. Patterns don't lie. She rubbed her eyes. I feel like everything is falling apart. I sat beside her. It's not. It's shifting. There's a difference. She let out a slow, trembling breath. I'm scared. I know. But I don't want you to stop, she whispered, surprising me. I blinked. You don't? I want the truth, she whispered. I want to understand what she's been doing behind my back." Her voice cracked on the last words. "She wasn't just talking about finances." I nodded. "Then trust me for a little longer." She nodded weakly. Later that night, as the house quieted, I returned to my office and reopened the documentation folder. A strategy formed in clean, precise lines. Not a confrontation, not an argument, something more effective, something stable, something undeniable. And as I organized the files, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Pauline. "You think you're clever. You have no idea what you're starting." I stared at the message for several seconds, then saved a screenshot and placed it into the folder. Christmas had cracked open the story. Now I planned to finish it. Not with noise. With facts. With structure. With consequences she couldn't charm her way out of. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair, feeling the calm clarity that always comes right before I make a large move at work. This wasn't work, but it was about to follow the same rules. Christmas morning arrived with that strange, hushed heaviness a house gets after a long night. Not a quiet house, just one where everyone is thinking separately but intensely, walking around as if speaking too loudly might snap something fragile. I woke earlier than usual, partly because I'd slept lightly, partly because I wanted a head start before the rest of the household began tiptoeing around what happened at dinner. Denise moved quietly in the kitchen, making coffee the way she does when she's trying to center herself. The kids were still asleep. Our daughter had probably run through her mental checklist twice before even opening her eyes. Our son would barrel down the stairs in an hour with his usual enthusiasm, unaware of any of the adult tension swirling through the air. I stood by the window, watching frost cling to the glass. Denise glanced over at me. "Can we not make today harder?" she asked softly, the kind of request that carries more layers than the words suggest. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You're planning something." I didn't answer, which was answer enough. She set down the mug. "I can't lose my mom right now, not completely." "You're not losing her," I said. "You're seeing her clearly." "That's not better." "Maybe not now." She rubbed her forehead. "Aaron, the kids deserve a peaceful day." "They'll have one," I said. "I'm not starting anything today, but I'm not stopping anything either." The distinction hung between us. She knew what it meant. I knew she knew. There was no point softening it. We opened presents with forced enthusiasm, a kind of practiced holiday cheer that kept the kids happy enough. Our daughter watched me closely, like she expected the day to pivot at any moment. She understood more than she let on. Our son remained blissfully focused on his new toy drone. Around noon, we sat at the table for a simple lunch. I noticed Denise kept glancing at her phone every few minutes, waiting for a message she dreaded but expected. Pauline had gone silent since the night before, and silence from her always meant preparation. She never stayed quiet unless she was arranging a story, crafting a version of events that suited her, or shuffling people like game pieces into positions that benefited her. It was only a matter of time before she made her move. It came sooner than I thought. At 1:17 p.m., Denise's phone buzzed. She read the message, color draining from her face. "It's from my mom," she whispered, handing me the phone. The screen showed a paragraph of expertly crafted manipulation. "I'm very hurt by what happened yesterday. I didn't appreciate being spoken to that way in my own home. I expect an apology from you and the children, and from Aaron for encouraging this behavior. I'd like to resolve this before things escalate." I handed the phone back to Denise. "She's starting early." "This isn't good," she murmured. "She's making it sound like the kids insulted her on purpose." "She always reframes things," I said. "It's how she maintains control." Denise clutched the phone. "I don't want a fight between you and her." "There already is one," I said calmly. "She just hasn't realized I've shifted the ground under her feet." "You're talking like this is a strategy session." "It is." She closed her eyes. "Please don't drag the kids into this." "I'm not dragging them," I said. "She is." And she tried to drag our son into something far worse yesterday. Denise flinched at the reminder. She knew it was true. She just didn't know how to respond. I decided not to push further. Instead, I spent the afternoon quietly tightening my documentation. Not revenge, just order, just facts. Just a timeline built strong enough that not even Pauline could pry it apart. That evening, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. Taylor. He stood on the porch, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, posture squared like he was preparing for a physical showdown. Behind him, his truck idled loudly at the curb, headlights cutting harsh beams across our lawn. I opened the door. "You're 2 days late for whatever this is." He stepped forward. "We talk. Now." Behind me, our daughter stood halfway down the stairs, watching silently. Denise appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. The house seemed to pull in on itself, bracing. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Taylor got right to it. "You're trying to turn my sister against our mom." "No," I said. "Your mom is doing that all on her own." He scoffed. "Cut the act, Aaron. You're stirring things up with that compliance nonsense, making drama out of normal expenses." "Normal?" I raised an eyebrow. "The lodge is a supplier now?" "It's none of your concern." She charged the boutique card. "It is my concern when it affects Denise's livelihood." He stepped closer, shoulders stiff. "Don't talk like you understand this family." "I understand patterns," I said calmly. "I understand when someone uses a business account for personal reasons. And I understand when someone covers for it." His jaw twitched. "You think you're clever. You think you can just dig." "I don't dig," I said. "I document." His face reddened and he shoved me, not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to send a message. A classic Taylor move. Physical dominance to hide the fact that he never wins arguments. I didn't stumble. I just looked at him. "You don't get to push your way through this," I said. He shoved me again. This time, I stepped slightly toward him afterward. Not aggressively, just enough to make him realize I wasn't impressed. "You want to try that a third time?" I asked quietly. "Go ahead. See how it plays out." He froze, momentarily thrown by how calm I remained. People like him expect shouting. They expect flailing. They don't know what to do when someone stands firm and steady. "You're messing with things you don't understand," he said. "No," I said. "You're covering for things you refuse to understand." He stepped back, breathing hard. Then he said the line that told me everything I needed to know. "Mom said you were going to cause trouble. She said you've been snooping." Snooping was her word. She always used it to discredit legitimate concern. I exhaled slowly. "Taylor, there are receipts. There are vendor logs. There are timestamps. There are things you don't know, and things your mom doesn't want you to know." He hesitated. A very brief hesitation, but noticeable. "Leave her out of this," he said, voice cracking slightly. "You should ask where she went last Thursday," I said. "Ask her directly, and ask who she went with." He blinked aggressively, like the question itself was offensive. "This isn't finished," he muttered. "No," I agreed. "It's not." He turned and stormed down the porch steps. His truck door slammed shut. The engine revved too loudly, an unnecessary display of tension. Then he sped off, tires skidding slightly on the frost. I walked back inside. Denise stood in the entryway, hands trembling. "He shoved you." "Yes." "You didn't do anything back?" "I didn't need to." Our daughter appeared beside her, watching me with that same steady, unsettling maturity she'd shown at dinner. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm fine." She nodded once, satisfied. We went through the motions of the evening, but the energy in the house simmered like an unplugged appliance that still feels warm. Denise kept glancing at me with a mix of fear and relief, as if she wasn't sure which emotion she was supposed to choose. After the kids went to bed, she turned to me at the sink. "My brother. He's unpredictable." "I know. He could make things worse." "He already tried," I said, "and we handled it." She swallowed. "I don't want this to grow." "It's already grown," I said gently. "Now it needs to be managed." She closed her eyes. "I'm scared of what's coming." I didn't answer, because the truth was simple. I was too, but fear doesn't stop a storm. Preparation does. The next day, I returned to the boutique. Pauline had called a meeting with the staff, thinly disguised as a holiday recap. When I stepped inside, the employees scattered like startled birds. Pauline stood at the counter, arms crossed, posture stiff with manufactured calm. "I didn't invite you," she said. "I know." "Then why are you here?" "To check on Denise's interests. She works here. She deserves transparency." Her smile thinned. "This is a family matter." "Exactly," I said. She glared. "If you think you can intimidate me, you're mistaken." "I'm not intimidating you," I said calmly. "I'm observing you." That bothered her far more. "You're blowing things out of proportion," she said. "One small mistake at dinner, and suddenly you're trying to destroy my entire business." "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm documenting what's already happening." She grew eerily still. "Watch yourself." That tone, low, controlled, sharpened, was the same tone she used when she wanted to force compliance through fear. I noted it mentally, then stepped forward, leaning just enough to make the counter feel smaller between us. "I know about Hollow Ridge Lodge," I said quietly. "I know whose signature is on that receipt." Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. "A tell? A big one." "You have crossed a line," she said. No, I said. You did. She pointed at the door. Leave. I left, but not before noticing the way her hands trembled slightly, a microscopic vibration she tried to hide by clasping them together. Back in my car, I opened the glove compartment, pulling out the file I'd added to the night before. I flipped through the documents, checking them the way a pilot checks instruments before takeoff. Everything lined up, everything was clean, everything was ready. Later that afternoon, Denise's aunt called her. I could overhear the conversation from 2 rooms away. It didn't take long to pick up the basics. Pauline had already told several relatives that I'd caused an incident at Christmas, that I'd become controlling, that the children had disrespected her, and that Denise needed to get her house in order. By dinner, 3 more relatives had sent messages, all framed with subtle disapproval. Denise sat at the table, face pale. She's turning everyone against us. No, I corrected. She's turning everyone against the story she fears. You talk like this is a chess game. It is? She looked at me, tears forming. I don't want to lose my family. You're not losing your family, I said. You're losing a lie. She covered her face. I placed a hand on her shoulder. Denise, I'm not trying to tear anything apart. I'm trying to stop you and the kids from being dragged into the consequences of something you didn't create. Her shoulders shook. I feel so stuck. You're not stuck, I said gently. You're waking up. That night, after she went to bed, I reopened the documentation folder again. The timeline was nearly complete. The evidence was airtight. The next steps were forming with a clarity that surprised even me. But there was one thing missing. One piece I had noticed, but hadn't yet traced fully. The lodge charges weren't just suspicious. They were paired with a pattern I hadn't identified until now. Shared transactions. Charges made within minutes of each other. 2 signatures appearing across different dates. Denise's former partner wasn't just present. He was involved. Oh, fully. And that meant this wasn't merely a case of Pauline exercising arrogance. It was a joint effort. A coordinated pattern. A story they'd built together. As I stared at the receipts, a quiet thought settled over me. They thought they could control the narrative. They thought I'd stay in the dark. They thought the quiet man who keeps everything organized would remain predictable. But they forgot something important. Quiet men don't stay quiet when their families are threatened. They plan, they prepare. And when they move with structure. I closed the folder. The story had entered a new phase, and I was done waiting for them to make the next move. By the time the week rolled around after Christmas, something in our house had changed shape. Not loudly, not visibly, just a quiet shift, like furniture moved an inch overnight, and you're not sure why the room suddenly feels different. Denise kept wandering through the day in distracted loops, as if she'd lost her script and was afraid of improvising. Our daughter kept her guard up so steadily it was almost alarming, watching everything with the same alertness she'd shown during the dessert incident. Even our son asked fewer questions than usual, picking up on the tension without knowing where to put it. And me? I operated in that mode I slip into whenever a situation at work is about to turn publicly messy but privately solvable. It's not aggression, it's precision. I was gathering things, documenting things, lining up information the way some men line up tools before a repair job. Everything had a place. Everything was becoming ready. The next move came from the boutique's landlord. On Tuesday morning, I received a call from an unknown number, and since unknown numbers usually mean trouble or opportunity, I answered. The landlord's voice was strained but polite, the kind of tone people use when they're worried but trying to sound professional. Mr. Whitmore, he said, I've received several irregular expense reports from your wife's business. Do you have a moment? My instinct wasn't surprise, just confirmation. Yes, I said, I have a moment. He began listing discrepancies. My mental timeline matched each one. He asked if I knew anything about them. I explained calmly that I had noticed issues weeks earlier and was assembling records to present formally. He exhaled heavily, thankful to hear someone speak in straightforward sentences. He said, I'll need official documentation from you if you're willing. I'm willing, I said. You realize this could affect their lease? I assumed so. A long pause. I appreciate your honesty. Honesty wasn't the right word. It was simply clarity. After the call, I printed every file from my folder and assembled them neatly on the office table. Timestamps, card statements, signed receipts, location logs, vendor lists, communications. It looked like a miniature battlefield without the smoke, just evidence and implications arranged in rows. That's when I heard Denise behind me. Aaron, she whispered, eyes fixed on the papers. What is all this? I turned. It's the truth, she swallowed. It looks like you're building a case. I'm building a record. A record of what? That my mother makes bad decisions, that she lies, that she took him there. Her voice trembled at the last part. Yes, I said. Exactly that. She took a step closer. Are you going to show someone this? I already have. Her face fell. The landlord called me, I continued. He saw discrepancies too. He asked for documentation. I provided it. She sank into a chair. Not dramatically, just slowly, like her body no longer knew how to hold itself. So this is happening. It's been happening for a while, I said gently. Now it's visible. She rested her forehead on her hand. She's going to hate me. No, I said. She'll hate me. She already does. That doesn't make me feel better, she said quietly. I'm not trying to make you feel better. I'm trying to protect you. Her eyes lifted, filled with a mix of confusion and something that looked dangerously close to trust. I didn't think it would go this far. Your mother brought it this far. She nodded weakly, as if accepting something she never wanted to confront. By early afternoon, Pauline had learned about the landlord's inquiry. No surprise there. She must have sprinted into damage control mode because my phone lit up with a message request from a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. We need to talk. Meet me at the boutique now. Pauline. Ordinarily, I ignore commands phrased like ultimatums, but today I needed information she wouldn't give voluntarily through a screen. When I arrived, the boutique door was locked, even though business hours weren't over. Pauline stood inside, waving irritably for me to enter. The moment I stepped in, she locked the door again. She crossed her arms. You're trying to sabotage us. No, I said. I'm documenting irregularities. You think you're clever, she said, circling around the counter like she owned the whole block. The landlord called me. He said you're preparing some sort of complaint. He called me first, I replied, because he noticed something was wrong. It's normal to have occasional mislabeling, she snapped. Not a pattern, not a repeated destination, not paired signatures. She froze. You have no idea what you're implying, she said. I'm not implying anything, I said. I'm showing proof. She pointed at me sharply. You are tearing this family apart, all because you can't mind your own business. When your choices compromise my wife's livelihood, I said, it becomes my business. She took a step closer. You think Denise will thank you for this? No, I said truthfully. I don't expect thanks. Then why are you doing it? She demanded. Because I'm not letting you drag the kids into your mess. Not again. Her lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. You're going to regret this. I won't, I said. You're weak, she hissed. You don't confront problems directly. You just hide behind papers and timelines like some sort of... I didn't let her finish. I confront things in ways that work, I said calmly. Yelling doesn't work, manipulation doesn't work, but structure does. Her expression flickered just slightly, enough to tell me she understood exactly what I was saying. She wanted chaos. She wanted noise. I was giving her neither. When I turned to leave, she shouted after me, "Don't walk away from me." But I did, and I didn't look back. Outside, the winter air felt cool and almost refreshing compared to the heat of Pauline's frantic energy. My car was parked under the same flickering streetlight as before. The boutique looked smaller from the outside, like the walls had shrunk around her. Before I could get in the car, I heard an engine roar around the corner. Taylor. He pulled up beside me, slammed the truck door, and stomped toward me with a posture that had all the subtlety of a marching band. His face was tight, his neck flushed, his fists clenched. You talked to the landlord? He demanded. He talked to me, I corrected. Taylor jabbed a finger in my direction. You're wrecking things that don't belong to you. I stepped back slightly, not from fear, but to create enough distance to control the conversation. The boutique's finances affect Denise, so they do belong to me, indirectly. He took that badly. He lunged forward, grabbing my jacket collar with both hands. Not enough to harm, but enough to startle. His breath came out in sharp bursts. The streetlight flickered above us. You think you're strong, he growled. You think your little spreadsheets make you untouchable? I didn't shove him. I didn't raise my voice. I simply gripped his wrists and pushed them down firmly until he let go. I'm not trying to be strong, I said. I'm trying to be correct. He stared at me, thrown off by my calmness. Bullies rarely know what to do when someone stays steady instead of panicking or fighting. He stepped back, shaking his head. You're ruining everything. Everything was already ruined, I said. I'm just cleaning up what your mom tried to hide. He looked like he wanted to shove me again, but couldn't justify it in public. Instead, he turned toward his truck, kicked his tire with a burst of irritation, and drove off with a noise that made the street lamp flicker harder. I sat in my car for a moment, hands steady on the wheel. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't accelerate. I just sat there, feeling a calm certainty settle in. They were unraveling. I didn't have to push them. They were doing it themselves. Back home, Denise was perched on the sofa, knees pulled to her chest, the posture of someone waiting for an earthquake after the first tremor. "Your brother confronted me," I said, sitting beside her. She closed her eyes. "Of course he did." "He'll be fine," I said. "He's blustering. He doesn't actually know what's happening." She rubbed her temples. "Mom's gotten to him." "Yes." "She's gotten to half the family." I shrugged. That was always going to happen. People like her move fast when they feel trapped. Denise let out a long exhale. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," I said. "You didn't cause this." She shook her head. "I should have paid more attention. I should have questioned things earlier. I should have—" "No," I said, cutting her off gently. "You trusted your mother. That's not a mistake. That's conditioning." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She hadn't cried once during all of this. That alone told me how strong she was. Later in the evening, after the kids went to bed, Denise sat across from me at the dining table. She looked exhausted, but something in her eyes had sharpened. "What happens next?" she asked. "Next," I said carefully, "I send the formal documentation to the insurer." "And then?" "Then the boutique's status changes." She swallowed. "Will Mom lose it?" "She might." "And she'll blame you," she said quietly. "She already does." "But this will make it worse." "Yes." Denise stared at the table. "But it's the truth." "Exactly." She nodded slowly. "Okay." I blinked. "Okay?" "I don't want her hurting our kids. I don't want her dragging me into whatever she's doing. If she's lying, she needs to face it." It was the strongest statement she had made since this all began. "You're sure?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "But I trust you." I didn't take that lightly. The next morning, I finalized the packet. It was polished, thorough, unemotional, exactly what auditors want and manipulators hate. I submitted it with a calmness I hadn't felt in weeks. 2 hours later, the insurer called to confirm receipt. They asked clarifying questions. They thanked me for the detailed timeline. Then came the next message. Coverage review initiated. The boutique had entered a phase Pauline couldn't charm her way out of. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt something shift into place, like a puzzle piece finally landing where it belongs. That evening, I received another message, this time from an unfamiliar number, a name I hadn't expected to ever see again, Denise's former partner. It read, "I hear you've been asking questions. We should talk. Tonight." I stared at the screen, feeling not fear or anger, but a steady, growing clarity. The story had grown bigger than Pauline. And now, for the first time, the man connected to the lodge receipts wanted a meeting. The next phase had begun. I didn't answer the message right away. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, then brighten again when I tapped it, as if the phone itself was waiting for my reaction. The name attached to the number wasn't saved in my contacts, but I recognized it instantly. You don't forget someone who once tangled up your wife's life so thoroughly she needed years to scrape herself free. I sat at the dining table with the house settling around me in quiet creaks. Denise had taken the kids upstairs for showers. From the living room, I heard the drone of cartoon music. It struck me how normal everything appeared, like the calm before a heavy conversation you know you can't avoid. The message glared back at me. "We should talk. Tonight." I typed a simple reply. "Where?" He sent an address. A parking lot near an old hardware store that had been shut down for 2 years. Neutral ground, or at least as neutral as anywhere can be when you're meeting the man who once decided he could waltz back into someone's life through the side door her mother held open. I slipped on my coat, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside quietly. The night air had that sharp winter sting to it, crisp enough to make breathing feel like stirring frost. I didn't tell Denise where I was going, not because I wanted to hide it, but because she had reached emotional capacity hours ago. The next phase would require steadiness, and I didn't want her to watch something she didn't need to carry. The hardware store sat under a flickering streetlight that cast long, uneven shadows across the cracked asphalt. I pulled into the lot and parked. A few seconds later, another car slid in on the opposite side. He stepped out, hands in his pockets, posture loose in that manufactured casual way people use when they want to appear in control. He approached slowly. "Aaron," I nodded. "Long time." "You've been asking questions," he said, stopping a few feet from me. "I've been finding answers." He chuckled, but it wasn't amused, more a short exhale of annoyance. "Your wife's mom exaggerated things. Made it sound like you were trying to blow up the whole business. I shrugged. I'm just correcting irregularities. That's what she said you'd say. I studied him. Older than the last time I'd seen him, though not by much. A little more facial stubble, a little less swagger, but the same habit of scanning the environment as if ready for someone to applaud or challenge him. Men like him often assume charm is enough to navigate complex messes. So, I said, you and Pauline have been meeting at Hollow Ridge Lodge. His expression twitched. Not what you think. That's becoming a popular sentence around here. He shifted his weight. Look, she needed someone's help with business advice. You're not a consultant. Well, he said, giving a half smirk, I know more than you'd guess. And yet, I replied, you were signing boutique charges at a lodge, not exactly standard procedure. He straightened. She told me you'd twist it? She also told Denise it was a supplier meeting. That wasn't my idea. I know whose idea it was. His jaw clenched. There it was, confirmation without words. I'm not here to argue, he said finally. I'm here to warn you. I raised an eyebrow. Warn me? She's coming unglued, he said. She thinks you're going to ruin her life. I'm not ruining her life, I said. I'm revealing what she did. She won't see it that way, he said, voice low. She's spiraling. She's talking about creating her own version of events, turning people against you, making Denise pick a side. She already tried, I said. It didn't work. He stared at me, surprised. Really? Yes? Huh, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Didn't expect that. I know. He hesitated. She got me involved because she said Denise needed supervision. She said you were rigid, controlling. She made it sound like you were the problem. I felt a spark of something. Not anger exactly, but a clean, sharpened clarity. I'm sure she did, I said. And because I used to be close to the family, he continued, I figured maybe I could help, keep her from doing anything out of line. By signing your name on boutique expenses? His throat bobbed. She insisted. You didn't have to agree. She said it was harmless, he said, just to make some paperwork balance. I didn't know she'd pull you into it. You didn't know she'd get caught. He didn't deny it. We stood in silence for a moment. Frost crept along the edges of the parking lines as the temperature dipped. He exhaled, breath visible. She's going to push back, he said. Hard. You need to understand that. She doesn't lose. She doesn't let go. She doesn't get a choice this time, I said. He studied me like he was seeing something unexpected. A man who wasn't loud or dramatic, but quietly immovable. You're different than what she said, he admitted. Most things she says are projections, I replied. He sighed. I should have stayed out of this. I didn't think it would blow up. It blew up because you let her pull you in, I said. But you still have time to get out. He frowned. How? Don't contradict anything I present to the insurer. His brows knit together. You mean stay quiet? Yes, he hesitated. And if I don't? Then the pattern looks deliberate, I said. And that won't go well for anyone involved. He let out a breath, shoulders dropping in reluctant acceptance. You're not the guy everyone warned me about. I'm the guy who protects his family, I said. I'm not playing her game. He nodded once. Fine, I'll stay out of it. I gave him a simple nod. The conversation was over. He walked back to his car, shoulders hunched, posture smaller than when he arrived. I waited until he drove off before getting into my own car. As I headed home, the quiet hum of the heater filled the cabin. I felt something subtle shift inside me, not triumph, not relief, just confirmation that the ground had finally stopped tilting beneath my feet. When I walked inside, Denise was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She looked up at me with wide, searching eyes. Where did you go? I talked to him, I said simply. Her breath caught. Why? Because he reached out? And? He knows what's happening. He knows your mother lied, and he's backing away. Her shoulders sagged, part tension, part exhaustion, part disbelief. She used him, she murmured, just like she used everyone. She won't be able to anymore. She rubbed her forehead. Did he say anything else? I hesitated. He said she's unraveling. Denise swallowed. That's not good. It's necessary, I said. Before she could respond, a loud knock rattled the front door. Not a polite knock, a heavy, impatient one. I opened it to find Taylor again. This time his posture wasn't blustering. It was frantic. His eyes were wild, his hands shaking slightly. "We need to talk," he said abruptly. "No," I replied. "We already did." He stepped inside without waiting for permission. I blocked his path with my arm. "You don't get to barge in," I said. "Mom called me," he said, voice strained. "She said you're destroying her reputation. She said the insurer is involved. She said you're setting her up." "I'm not setting her up," I said. "I'm documenting what she did." "You're twisting everything," he barked. "No," I said calmly. "She is." He shoved me again, harder this time, but I'd been expecting it. I planted my feet. He bounced off my stance like he hadn't anticipated any resistance. "What is wrong with you?" he snarled. "You're making my family fall apart." "Your mother made choices," I said. "I'm simply refusing to hide them for her." He lunged forward and grabbed a stack of mail from the entry table, flinging it across the floor in a burst of frustration. Envelopes scattered, a few slid under the couch. Denise ran out of the kitchen. "Taylor," she shouted, "stop!" He turned toward her. "He's turning you against Mom, against all of us." "No," she said firmly. She did that herself. The words seemed to stun him. He stared at her like he had never heard her speak before. Something in his expression cracked. Not softened, not healed, just cracked. A realization that whatever script Pauline had given him was no longer matching reality. "You're brainwashed," he muttered weakly. "No," she said. "I'm awake." He blinked several times, then looked at me, confusion fighting with anger inside him. "This isn't over," he whispered. "It is," I said. "You just haven't accepted it yet." He turned and left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the window panes. Denise sagged against the wall, face pale. "I can't believe I said that." "It needed to be said." She shook her head slowly. "This is going to get ugly." "It's already ugly," I said gently. "Now it's just visible." She didn't argue. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I stepped outside to take out the trash. The driveway was slick with a thin sheen of ice. The cold air bit at my face as I pulled the bin to the curb. That's when I saw headlights slowing near our yard. A car rolled past, slowed again, then reversed slightly. The driver's window lowered. Pauline. She stared at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Desperate, furious, frightened, all tangled together. "You think you won," she said through the open window, "but you have no idea who you're dealing with." I stepped toward her car. "I'm dealing with someone who thought she could hide everything forever." Her hands tightened around the wheel. "You're ruining Denise." "No," I said. "I'm protecting her." "She was happier before you started digging." "Then she was living in a story you wrote." Her eyes gleamed with something sharp. "I'm not going down for this." "You already are." She let out a strangled sound, half laugh, half something else, and then drove off, tires catching briefly on the icy patch before finding traction. I stood in the cold, watching her taillights disappear. Inside, I returned to my office and opened the folder again. Each document felt heavier now, not in a painful way, but in a finalizing way, like a stage prop revealed under bright light. I sat in silence for several minutes, the soft hum of the heater the only sound in the room. Then I noticed something, a new file notification. Our daughter had shared a folder with me. I opened it. Inside were screenshots, photos, time-stamped notes, things she had collected on her own, conversations she had overheard, patterns she had noticed, all neatly organized, clearer than anything Pauline had expected a teenager to assemble. One screenshot showed Pauline texting someone, "He won't stop. I need to make him look unstable. Otherwise everything falls apart." Another showed a full list of boutique transactions, ones I hadn't yet uncovered, matched with comments our daughter had written. Mom didn't know. Grandma told her not to ask. I exhaled slowly, a wave of realization settling over me. She had known far more than she ever let on. She had been documenting on her own. She had built her own timeline, not because she distrusted us, but because she trusted truth, and because she understood, instinctively, what adults in her family had spent years avoiding. We weren't dealing with one bad decision. We were dealing with a legacy of manipulation. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The quietest person in the house had been the most prepared, and the story wasn't just a family unraveling, it was a generational shift. I closed the laptop gently. This wasn't just my plan anymore. It was ours. And the final phase was about to begin. The morning after Pauline's driveway confrontation felt strangely calm, like the air had been reset, but the ground underneath was still shifting. I woke before everyone else and sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee I barely tasted. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine a future where this tension didn't hang above us like a low ceiling. But the thought didn't last. The final step was waiting. When Denise came downstairs, she looked like she had slept in pieces rather than hours. She sat across from me, fingers curled around her mug as if absorbing warmth from it. "We can't keep living like this," she said softly. "We won't," I replied. She looked at me as if she wanted to ask whether that was a promise or a warning. Maybe it was both. Before she could say more, my phone buzzed. A notification from the boutique's insurer. I opened it, and the words were simple, clinical, and irreversible. Coverage suspended pending full investigation. Denise inhaled sharply when she saw my expression. "It happened." "Yes." "They're going to tell her, aren't they?" "Probably today." She wrapped her arms around herself. "She's going to blame me." "No," I said firmly. "She'll blame me." "That doesn't help," she whispered. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "It protects you." She didn't respond, but she didn't pull her hand away either. An hour later, my phone rang. This time from the landlord. I stepped outside to answer. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, "we've made a decision. The boutique lease will be revoked. There's enough concern that we need to terminate early." "What's the timeline?" I asked. 30 days. We'll announce formally this afternoon." "Understood." "And thank you," he added quietly. "Your documentation made this clear." It wasn't satisfaction I felt, not vindication, just a steady acknowledgement that everything had reached the point it was always going to reach. When I walked back into the house, Denise was waiting. "Well?" she asked. "It's ending," I said. "The lease is gone." Her face shifted. Not relief, not panic, something more complicated. "I worked there since I was 20, she said softly. "I spent holidays there. I watched half my life through those windows." "You didn't lose that," I said gently. "You lost the illusion your mother built around it." She nodded faintly, eyes glossy. The kids came downstairs then, and we switched into normal parent mode. Breakfast, backpacks, reminders about where the gloves were. Life doesn't pause, not even when everything else tilts. By mid-afternoon, the news was out. Pauline called Denise first. Denise answered with trembling hands. I stood nearby, listening to the one-sided storm. "Mom, please slow down," she said. "No, I didn't do anything. I didn't call anyone. I didn't submit anything. No, he didn't force me. Mom, stop shouting." She pulled the phone away for a moment, breathing unevenly. "Mom," she said finally, voice steadying with effort, "this happened because of your choices." I heard Pauline through the speaker, sharp, furious words that sounded like accusations being thrown like stones. Denise closed her eyes. "I'm done arguing. I'm done pretending. If you want to talk calmly, call later." She hung up. Her hands shook for a full minute afterward. "You didn't have to say all that," I said gently. "Yes," she whispered. "I did." Later that day, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the neighborhood lights flickered on, Pauline showed up in person. I saw her car before she made it to the door. She parked crookedly, like she hadn't been paying attention to the lines. When she stepped out, her expression was a mixture of outrage, disbelief, and something close to unraveling composure. She marched up the walkway and hammered on the door. I opened it before she could knock the second time. Her voice came out sharp and trembling. "You ruined my business." "No," I said. "You did that." "You think you're some kind of hero?" She spat. "You think exposing private matters makes you?" "Stop," I said, my voice low enough to cut through her rant. "This isn't about pride. It's about truth." She took a step forward, attempting to shove the door open wider, but I didn't give her space. "You manipulated your own daughter," I continued. "You involved the wrong people. You charged personal trips to a business account. You arranged meetings behind Denise's back. You put our kids in a position you had no right to put them in, and then you expected everyone to cover for you." Her eyes blazed. "You encouraged your daughter to embarrass me at dinner." "Our daughter spoke because you endangered her brother," I said, "not because of anything I told her to do." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're tearing this family apart." "This family was already cracked," I said. "You just never expected anyone to see the fracture." For a moment, she looked almost startled by the bluntness. Then anger snapped back into place. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I replied. She stepped closer. "I can still fix this." "No," I said, meeting her gaze without blinking. "You can't." She opened her mouth to argue, but that was when Denise stepped beside me. Mom, she said softly but firmly. Stop. Pauline turned toward her, almost relieved for a second, until she saw Denise's expression. You need to leave, Denise said. Pauline blinked. What? You heard me. I am your mother, Pauline hissed. I raised you. You controlled me, Denise interrupted. You lied to me. You dragged me into your mess without explaining anything, and I let it happen for years, but I'm not letting it happen anymore. Pauline's jaw dropped, disbelief written across her face. You're choosing him over me? She demanded. I'm choosing the truth, Denise said, voice shaking but unwavering. Pauline turned red in an instant. Shock, rage, and something almost like heartbreak mixing together in rapid bursts. This isn't over, she said quietly. I'll rebuild without you. You might, Denise said softly, but not by using me. Pauline shook her head as if shaking off water. She took a step back, nearly stumbling on the uneven part of the walkway. She recovered quickly, straightened her coat, and marched back to her car. She slammed the door harder than necessary, reversed out of the driveway too fast, and sped off without looking back. The silence that settled afterward felt enormous. Denise let out a slow, shuddering breath. I placed my hand on her back. You okay? I asked. No, she said honestly, but I will be. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I opened our daughter's shared document again. This time, I read it slowly, absorbing every entry she had added. Little notes, bits of overheard conversations, observations about people's moods. She had caught things I'd missed, details that filled in the last gaps of the story. When she knocked softly on my office door, she didn't look nervous, just thoughtful. Did she leave? She asked. Yes. Is it over? Almost. She sat in the chair across from me. I knew you'd fix it. I met her eyes. You helped more than you know. She nodded once, accepting that not as flattery, but as fact. Then she asked, What happens now? We protect your mom, I said. We make sure the fallout doesn't touch you or your brother, and we make sure Pauline can't rewrite the story. She seemed satisfied with that answer. When she went to bed, I sat in the dim light of the office, thinking through the last remaining loose ends. There weren't many, but one stood out. Pauline's attempt to paint me as unstable. She'd hinted at it in that one message the kids weren't supposed to see. She likely had rehearsed versions of that narrative ready to distribute to relatives who preferred gossip over truth. So I prepared the final folder, a set of statements, timelines, screenshots, receipts, organized not for conflict, but for clarity. A record for anyone who needed to see it. Something unspinnable. Something Pauline couldn't twist. The next morning, I delivered copies personally to the landlord and insurer. Both thanked me. Both confirmed that their decisions were final. By afternoon, word had spread across the family network. Some relatives messaged Denise in confusion. Others stayed silent. A few, very few, asked if she needed anything. But none of them supported Pauline's version, not after seeing the evidence. That evening, as the sun lowered behind the houses and shadows stretched across the yard, a car rolled slowly past our driveway. Not stopping, just passing, watching, Pauline. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her as she drove by without turning her head. There was no yelling now, no threats, no desperate attempts at control, just quiet acknowledgement of a story she no longer controlled. Inside, Denise sat on the couch with our daughter curled against her, both tired but lighter somehow. Our son played with his drone on the carpet, blissfully unaware of the tectonic shift that had just occurred around him. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Denise looked up. She drove by? Yes. Did she stop? No. Good, she whispered. I sat beside her, the weight finally settling, not heavy, not dark, just complete. You did it, she said. You actually did it. No, I said softly. We did? She rested her head on my shoulder, steady for the first time in weeks. I wrapped my arm around her, feeling the quiet of the house settle around us. Not tense, not brittle, just quiet in the way a place feels after something long overdue has finally snapped into place. My daughter looked up at me then, the same calm eyes she'd had at Christmas dinner, but softer now. It's really over, she said. Yes, I told her. It is. And for the first time since this began, I felt the truth of it. The story didn't need an epilogue.